Hey guys, I know this is a quick break from my normal videos, but I wanted to give some quick thoughts on a franchise I have a history with. As you guys have probably seen by now all over the internet, Sora is the final Smash character. Now I'm sure there's going to be some grunts and groans from the audience, and trust me, Sora wasn't exactly my pick for the last one, rest in peace Gino. But then again, I'm glad he wasn't because I think I would have been wrong, and Sakurai clearly did it better. This is my opinion on why Sora is the perfect final Smash character. First, let's look at the history of Smash. I grew up in the 90s, so I'm fairly familiar with the Smash franchise, and especially the first game that came out for the Nintendo 64. It was a mind-blowing concept in gaming at the time. Nobody as a kid would ever expect to settle a debate of Pokemon is better than Mario by beating your friend into oblivion with Pikachu. And honestly, I owe this game for introducing me to one of my favorite games of all time, Earthbound, another video I plan to make in the future. When Melee came out 2 years later in 2001, it left a lasting impact not only on the Smash franchise, but the fighting game culture itself. And yes, I call Smash a fighting game. If you have the core mechanics of a fighting game in a fighting game, despite how it looks, it's still a fighting game. As tournaments are still held to this day. It had updated graphics, a larger roster, more stages, improved mechanics, everything you could want in a perfect sequel. While it would be 7 years before we got another sequel, fans were antsy as they waited. People wanted all sorts of characters in Smash. Sonic, Banjo, Cloud, Geno, Ryu, etc. A lot of us were thinking, well, if they could pull obscure characters from games we've never heard of, like Roy, Marth, or bring in characters like Mr. Game & Watch and Ice Climbers, anything's possible, right? A popular fan game called Super Smash Flash was made and even had some of the characters I mentioned. Hell, they even threw Naruto and Mega Man X into the mix. I even remember hearing rumors back in the day that Melee originally had Sonic and Tails planned for it, with fake April Fool's screenshots proving its existence. When Brawl came out, despite how you feel about the game, it made another impact. Once again, it had new graphics, new story mode, larger roster, and for the first time ever, third-party characters. Solid Snake and of course, Sonic the Hedgehog. Yeah, that's right, Mario's ultimate rival from another company in the 90s was now here to settle the score with Mario. And of course, Konami's own Solid Snake breaking into Smash Bros. Was huge news as well. Smash 4 came out in 2014 for the 3DS and Wii U. In my opinion, this game is what helped save the Wii U from being scrapped earlier than it could have been alongside Super Mario Maker. Because I didn't own a GameCube and came to Brawl really late when I finally got a Wii, 4 was the first game I really took time to learn from the 64 days, and boy did I have a learning curve. This is something I'll talk about in a future video, but 4, again, updated graphics, new story mode, larger roster, bringing back stages and fighters from the past, balanced gameplay, etc. But not only that, and what was a shock to myself and other fans since the 2000s, we got characters we never thought we would see in official Smash games, Cloud and Ryu. And let's not forget Pac-Man, Mega Man, and Bayonetta because those are notable names too, but Cloud and Ryu! Not to mention Ryu carrying over his mechanics from Street Fighter. That brings us to Smash Ultimate. I don't even have to give this game an introduction, largest roster to date with now a total of 89 characters. We got characters that definitely were wanted also in days past. King K. Rool, Banjo-Kazooie, Simon Belmont, Isabelle, but little did we know we had some shocking times ahead of us as far as DLC. First, Joker. This one made sense because Persona 5, at least among my peers, was still very popular at the time. Then came Hero, again made sense because of Dragon Quest's popularity. I mentioned Banjo and Kazooie earlier as also a long time coming, but because Rare owned the characters and moved to Xbox a long time ago, this just didn't seem possible at the time. Then we got Terry Bogard, another favorite of mine, and what people don't realize is Sakurai is a true fan of the fighting game classics. The next notable one was Steve, and despite how you feel about this, I actually thought it was smart. Fire Emblem characters were overdone at this point, and while he was nowhere near my picks at the time, all the DLCs at that point were fun to play. And even talking about other games outside of Smash, we saw all kinds of crossovers that we never thought possible. Akuma, Noctis and Geese in Tekken, Robocop, Terminator, and Predator in Mortal Kombat. You really could say anything was possible at this point. Hell, even Sans from Undertale was in the game, as a skin at least. And funny enough, I called it a year ago that it was going to open more doors for franchises to trust Smash in handling the characters. If Minecraft, the powerhouse that it is, could now trust Sakurai, who else could we get? And then we got Sephiroth. I had never honestly expected we would see another Final Fantasy character, but it was very fitting that Sephiroth would be here to antagonize Cloud once again in a separate franchise. But no, it didn't stop there. Kazuya Mishima was here to throw people off cliffs. And in a sick and funny way, his CPU became notorious for being hard to beat as a flashback to Tekken 2 days. And Sakurai once again treated the franchise right by having his moveset and similar input just like he did with Ryu and Terry. This now brings us to the meat of the discussion and why I think Sora is the perfect Final Smash character. The first reason is that it's super fitting. Smash was a radical concept back in the day, as I mentioned before, and Mario Giant Swinging Link went together like peanut butter and jelly. I remember when Kingdom Hearts first came out in 2002, people dogged on it so bad and thought it was never going to work, but it did. Disney and Final Fantasy went together like bacon and eggs. What better way to end the Ultimate roster, a game notable for being one of the biggest crossovers of all time, than to have a protagonist of an equally notable crossover franchise? Two of the biggest games back in the early 2000s have now finally come together 20 years later. That brings us to the second reason. He's been a wanted character for almost 20 years now. It's crazy to think that I've been alive and have been aware of how long he's been wanted as a Smash Bros. Character. And as the saying goes, what a time to be alive. Also, it turns out Sora won the poll back in 2015 as the most requested character. He's been up there in the picks for a long time, along with others that have been wanted such as Geno, Waluigi, Goku, Naruto, and yes, I'm being dead serious about those last two. I've seen people request those names. And now Sora has made it. I remember seeing him in Smash Bros. Fan games and parodies as, man, this would be cool to happen someday, but I don't know if it ever will. To me, this is about as great as being there when Edge returned to wrestling in 2020 after a career-ending neck injury. The third reason is competition. I don't know if Sora being the final pick was a jab at Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl, which comes out today, but it couldn't have been a more perfect time. All-Star Brawl has looked promising since the teaser dropped, and it looks to be a solid alternative to Smash Bros. Considering the fact that Disney and Nickelodeon have been butting heads for years, Disney allowing Sora to be used in Smash was the boost it needed to take on All-Star Brawl. As we've seen in many things, competition brings out the best in everybody, and it pushes each person to their limits. I think Sakurai also wanted to give the fans something that they really wanted, coming back to that poll that was taken during the height of Smash 4. What does this mean for the future? Well, for one, Disney may be open to more crossovers with other games. Disney is notably very protective of its intellectual property. Even seeing Mickey Mouse and Bugs Bunny together in Who Framed Roger Rabbit was mind-blowing at the time, regardless of Disney owning the film rights. As I mentioned before, I really think Steve was a turning point, as so many different franchises have been a part of the Smash universe for some time. Minecraft is a powerhouse of its own, and to trust Smash was a huge step. Most importantly, this could be the last Smash Bros. Game, and I'm fairly certain it will be, and I could be mistaken. Sakurai notably has had health problems since working on the franchise. In 2013, he was diagnosed with calcific tendonitis near his right shoulder, which slowed down his work. While working on Ultimate, he had stomach issues and used an IV drip to help him get through development. He's worked long hours, and his health had taken a toll so much that he had to reshift his work-life balance to leave the office by 10 p.m. no matter what. Thankfully, a little over a month ago, he is no longer struggling with calcific tendonitis, and his health has seemingly improved. As someone who has had my own issues with overworking, not taking care of myself, and burning out, I hope Sakurai takes the proper rest that he needs, as he's done amazing things with the franchise over the past 22 years. Let me know what you guys think. What were some of your picks for the final Smash DLC? If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like and subscribe, as these all help my channel grow. Thanks for watching, stay beautiful, stay awesome, and we'll catch you around next time.